Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog Season 2, Episode 6. And this is Mortdog, and it is January 1st, 2026. We did it. We made it to a new year. And yeah, it's Thursday. I have 4 more days off before we go back to work, though I'm already starting to think about what I'm doing for work and things like that. I'm in the it's a new year, let's be productive mindset. I went out and tried to get my hair cut today, but everything was closed, so wasn't able to do that. But the other thing I got done today was I hit master finally. Woohoo! I had been taking my time and really exploring the set and really trying to understand the ins and outs of it rather than climb. I had played a lot of very weird things. For example, I can tell you I've played Reroll Briar. I've played a lot of very weird things. I've played other things in non-conventional ways. I talked to you about that T-Hex game where I tried eating a Vi 3 instead of a Caitlyn 3 to find out that it's much, 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 much worse, which isn't great, so that we can properly adjust things the right way. But what I will say is my final game was like the most therapeutic end to get to master. I was at 75 health. I'd been win streaking Bilgewater, playing it super well, just vertical bilge. And I had got a Tom Kench 2, and I'd been feeding him AP, and he was up to like 100 AP. I'm at 75 health. The second place player, the only player alive, is at 10 health, and they had a T-Hex 2, perfect setup, perfect items. You know how it is, the usual T-Hex stuff you see. And they just kept beating me. But I got to keep learning every fight. It was like, okay, what about this positioning? How does that make the T-Hex work? What about this positioning? And I kept feeding my T-Hex until it was probably about 200 AP. And then the very last fight, I'm down to my last bit of health. I position perfectly to where the Tom Kench and the Fizz both go directly for the T-Hex. The Fizz immediately casts, and the AoE hits the T-Hex. And the Fizz had like Death Cap, Jeweled Gauntlet, plus one of the bilge items, so it hit pretty hard. And then Tom Kench walks right up and had enough AP, eats the T-Hex, and that eat deletes the T-Hex, and I win the fight, giving me just enough LP because I needed a first to get to Masters, and I did it. And it was just so because even the person in chat was like GG before the fight started because they'd won like 6 in a row, and then I beat them. They went, oh, oops, GG the other way, and so it was great. So very, very therapeutic to kick T-Hex down. It's funny, by the way, that T-Hex started as this unique thing that only I knew how to play. I won Riot Rumble with it, and it was like this really niche line. And fast forward, now it's public enemy number 1. And everyone hates it, and I get about 3 to 5 tweets a day tweeting angrily at me about how I'm bad at my job and the T-Hex exists. So, it's definitely been a turn of a few events. So, and don't worry, I still, pretty grumpy with this patch, but definitely got there. And yeah. All right. I lined up some questions that you guys asked today on the Discord. Appreciate. There have been a lot of new questions coming in, which is great. So keep that up. The first question comes from somebody who says they're pretty new to TFT, and they said, "What are your thoughts on new players, and how do you want them to engage with TFT?" I thought this was an interesting question because obviously the first shallow answer is like, "What do you think of new players?" I love that we have new players. I'm so glad new people play TFT. Okay, cool, but that's a pretty shallow answer, right? Like, the dev likes new players for their game. Shocking. But I really like the second part of the question, which is, how do you want new players to engage with TFT? And this is a really interesting one because I think a lot of people, when they first start playing TFT, there's this instant gratification of like, I need to go up in the ranks as quickly as possible. I need to understand how to win. And I need to figure that all out. And so what they'll do is they'll learn some of the basics of like, okay, I get how the game kind of works. And then they'll focus in, and you'll see a lot of people also talk about this. Even like the challenger player guides will tell you, like, learn 1 to 3 comps, right? And if your goal is climbing, that's true, right? Like, learn a couple comps, learn how to play them well, and move up. The problem I have with that is if you're a truly new player, is that trying to like watching somebody who's like thinks they're good at TFT because they can force T-Hex and Bilgewater and nothing else, and then a new patch rolls around, and then they go, balance thrashing made me bad at the game, is a little irony, right? Like, my belief here is that if you truly want to engage with TFT, spend your first set just like being curious, learning what's an AP line feel like, what's an AD line feel like. Don't worry about your rank. Don't think about anything like that. Just try out lots of things. What does it feel like to play a reroll comp? What does it feel? And just be curious and learn as you go about like, well, what works, what doesn't, what augments do I enjoy? Like, ooh, I took this hero augment. Was that fun? Ooh, I don't really like rerolling. And you'll discover what it is about the game that you truly enjoy. Like for example, for me, I know that I enjoy Call to Chaos, right? Like something that forces me to react, but I know is extra powerful. I enjoy those things, something that allows me to adapt. Whereas, we've got lots of people in our audience that prefer to find like a couple good lines. There was someone in the TFT Discord staff chat that was like, every set I find one comp and I only play that. And it's like, okay, cool. If that's what you enjoy, do that. But I think a new player should spend their time exploring TFT, figuring out what it is they like about the game, what it is they enjoy, and then once they truly understand that and they've gotten their fundamentals good, then they can go, okay, now it's time to like really push ranked and really see how far I can take this using the style that I like, using the things that have become fun to me in the way I enjoy, combined with the knowledge of whatever's particularly meta at the time. And if you do that, what you'll find is that every single set, you can climb no matter what the meta is, because you can adapt your fundamentals and your play knowledge into a way that fits you. And I'm gonna pick on Soju a little bit here in a good way, is that Soju, if you've watched him for years, he has a style he likes, right? It's the very high risk, fast 9, try to go 9 as quick as possible, do a big pivot into a big board. Like, he loves that stuff. When that's meta, Soju's in his zone, And when it's not, and he tries to pull it off, he struggles a bit, but can make other things work, right? He knows how to play other things. And that's what makes Soju a player. And again, he's not doing it because he thinks it's best. He's doing it because that's what he enjoys. That's just the type of play that he clearly enjoys. And I think that's great. I think that someone like him who knows the way he likes to play and the way he likes to work, and it's funny too, because you'll watch him and even the games where like he gets first in a way that wasn't that, he'll end it maybe sarcastically and he'll go like, well, what wasn't that just boring, guys? I mean, like, I kind of just knew I was going to win because I like played the obvious thing, whoop-de-doo, riot balance. Yeah. And I think he's right, to some extent. The games that are more fun for him are the games where he cooks a little, takes a deep risk, fast 9, turns it around, and like that's exciting to him. The games for me that are exciting, I know that I personally enjoy tempo a lot. I love pushing aggressive win streaks. I'm a level 5 on 2/2 kind of guy if I can, if I have the right board for it. And those are the games I like. I'm a Warpath enjoyer. Warpath is my augment that, again, I know a lot of people don't like, that I enjoy. And so, again, all of this is to say, going back to the original question, my thoughts on new players are take your time, explore the game, really understand what you like and don't, then utilize that, dive into ranked, and have fun from that. So, yeah, that's kind of my answer. All right. Next question is, as we wrap up 2025, are you happy with how TFT innovated this year? Is there still more design space to innovate in TFT? So I think, the one-word answer to this is yes, I'm happy with how TFT innovated. The more complicated answer to this is that I think TFT took some swings. Sometimes the swings were like bunts, using the baseball analogy, and sometimes the swings were for the fences. And we learned a lot from all of them, right? Interestingly enough, I had just done an end of the year presentation about TFT to the whole company. And, we kind of go over each set a little bit. When I say a little bit, I mean, we're talking like 15 seconds, couple lines of dialogue per set, And in each set, we kind of talk about like the key learnings. And I'll use set 14 as an example, Cyber City. Using the baseball analogy, I would call that one the bunt, right? With set 14, we were like, let's innovate by trying a set that is basic and easy to approach, right? And let's see what that does, and let's learn from that. And what we learned was, well, the bunt was into I keep using these baseball analogies, apologies. The bunt was into, at best, a single, maybe even a ground out, and it's like, ooh, actually our audience really was pretty hungry for depth when we did set 14, and they were looking for a little more, and it felt a little basic, And then with set 15, we tried, swinging for the fences with something like power up fruit, but at the same time, we also learned that, like, we brought the wrong bat and our stance wasn't quite right, and didn't quite hit the home run we were hoping for, and there was some complexity there. So even though you could look at those two and say they were partially misses, I still think there's learnings from the innovations that were tried, and I'm glad at no point did the team go, let's just do the safest possible thing that we know works, right? Like, let's literally copy and paste set 13 and call it a day, right? I'm glad we didn't do that. And then obviously set 16, which I'm incredibly biased towards, was a very big swing for the fences that we've been planning for a while. And so far, looks like that's worked, right? Which is like, let's expand the number of champions, the number of permutations, the depth within a set, doing it in a simplistic way that's just more champions that you can choose to access in your own way. And like I said, I think that's been good. So when I combine all of those, am I like happy with how TFT innovated this year? Yeah. We did roles revamped. We cut things that we needed to, like support items and things like that. This is where an end of the year review video would be good, by the way. But yeah, like I said, overall, pretty happy with how we innovated. Could we have done more? Probably. Maybe. I don't know. Now, the harder part of this question is there more? And I've talked about this a little bit, but is there more? I hope so. I think so. My mind's been racing after set 16 of like, what's next? I had a conversation with Medler before the break about some future possibilities, and it's like, I think so. I think obviously I'm trying to be careful here and not like bury the lead a little bit, but I think there's more we can do. It's just a question of timing. It's a question of when, right? Like, hilariously enough, let's pretend this is a fake thing. Let's pretend I had this brilliant innovation today, right? Well, when does that mean I can get it to you guys as players? Set 20? 21? 23? 22? Actually, 22? Like, is this because we talked about set 16 and the unlock mechanic. That was an innovation January 2024 that didn't come out for almost 2 years because of the way we're getting forward facing and things like that. So, which has its negatives, right? If that's true. And again, I'm speaking purely in hypotheticals here. For all you know, I've already got one, and I'm just trying to play coy again. Haha. But, again, as an aside, do I think there's more, though, realistically? Yeah. I do think there's more. I think there is more innovation we can do in the space. And I think that's actually one of the things that, as I think about, the future over break, is that I can at least think of one major swing that I want to take. So, I think it was something Medler was excited about, too. So, yeah. We'll see. There you go. All right. Next question was, we talked about how when we added Kobuko, the reason that we added Kobuko as an original champion was we needed a tank. TFT has been missing, like, we only have so many tanks in League of Legends that truly feel like tanks. And especially with Yordles, we kept running into this problem where it was like Poppy gets overused as a tank in Yordle. So let's make another Yordle tank so we've got more to play with for good visual identity and, usage. And since we've added Kobuko, I think we've used him 3 times already, which shows you that, like, we really needed that archetype. So the question is, are there more archetypes missing besides Kobuko that we need? And the answer is, really, there's only 2. Because I'll go over what we don't need, right? We don't need more melee champions. We have plenty of melee, and in fact, one of the harder things is that melee is traditionally what you don't need a lot of in TFT, but there are so many melee champions that it feels like a lot of melee champions don't get their time to shine in League of Legends unless they can hybrid as a tank, right? So like Jax, for example, not really that interesting of an archetype, but at least with Jax, we can use Counter-Strike and make him like a low-cost tank. Cool, Jax can get included. Whereas like Tryndamere is a lot harder, right? Tryndamere does one thing. He swings his sword really hard and he has a spin. You cannot make that dude a tank. He is going to be a melee carry, whatever. Or if you look at a champion that hasn't been included for a long time in TFT, Master Yi, right? Like, you can't really make Master Yi a tank, so he doesn't get included that often, and his kit is like really hard to track, right? He has Alpha Strike, which is like a really hard to track move that's confusing for TFT. And then he autos and heals. Woo! You know. So definitely don't need more melee champions. We don't need more casters. We have plenty of casters because the other thing is that supports often fit in the caster archetype. So it's like between all the mid laners in League and all the support champions that are casters, we got plenty of mages. We got plenty of AP backliners. So I wouldn't worry about that. Which really leaves the other two archetypes. Tanks, which Kobakov is great, but if you told me I needed like 3 or 4 more tanks, I'd be like, yes, please. Right? I think Loris actually kind of shows this. Though I've seen some of the player pushback of like, why did they use Loris when they could have just used Jace? And it's like, it's kind of true, but again, like, Loris looks like a tank. If you're a non-League of Legends fan and you look at the game, Loris is clearly a tank. If you look at Jace, you're like, wait, what does he do? And if you just use him as a tank, it feels like a waste of the character's potential. Like, he has a transforming hammer. What does he do? Well, he hits hard. You know, he does it. Again, low-cost tank, sure, but you're never making Jace like a 4-cost tank. And that's the other big thing. Is like, I'd love to get some like low-cost tanks, or sorry, not low-cost, tanks that can actually be like higher-cost tanks, which would be kind of nice. So we still actually need more tanks. And then the other one I think we actually need is, hilariously enough, is ranged AD carries. Right now, I think if you look at every set over set, we end up reusing a lot of the same AD carries, right? This is why like Caitlyn and Kai'Sa and Kog'Maw and, Kog'Maw's not really AD, but you know, Misfortune and things like that. Like, we use like 70 to 80% of the league roster every set, and sometimes filling that out is actually the hardest part. So I would actually say like a couple more ranged AD users wouldn't be bad in the TFT space. But, you know, Yunara helped. We got another one with Yunara, which was kind of nice. And the other thing is, like I said, with all of these, it's like, we need champions that their kits really look good in TFT. Kobuko is an example where, as far as like his kit being good in TFT, he's a really good low-cost tank, for sure, right? Like, I mean, set 11, what did he do? He kind of like danced and punched. Okay, cool, fine. Worked great for set 11. Set 14, he kind of shoehorned into a 5-cost space, but like, that was not one of our better executed designs. And he also wasn't even a tank. He was like this awkward CC slapper damage dealer, which again, we cooked a little bit there, but don't know if that really fit the space. And now fast forward to set 16, and it's like, he is literally a warm body to hold Yumi. You know? So not a lot of design space there. And so I think if we added more stuff, that'd be great. Like, even Loris, what does he do? He holds up a shield and he blocks. Cool. You know? But again, I think the team cooked really well with Loris, and Loris feels good. I mean, it helps he's powerful, but also Loris is Loris. He's good. So again, the original question of, are there more archetypes? Could use even more tanks. Could use some ranged AD. That's probably about it. Anything beyond that, it feels like we've got stuff within the league space we could use. So yeah, that'd be my answer. All right, next question. Would you add? So there's been a push to remove dead time from TFT over the years, right? We've shortened the lead up time into PvE rounds. We've shortened carousel times, things like that, to try to get game time down, because 45-minute games are not where we want to be. But would you add time back into the game for crucial rounds, like 1-4 especially? Now, this set, we did add 2 seconds into 1-4 so that people can slam their items and get their, you know, their Shadow Isles active or their Bilgewater active or things like that. And like, you could add it in 1-4, you could add it like 4-1 after a big PvE round. Or what about an item that extends the timer a bit so like every player could use it one time, to add 15 seconds so they have more time when they need it? What do you think about that is the question. So my honest answer is no. I think if you have a design that is requiring you to add more time to TFT, the design is probably wrong. And I'll even throw myself under the bus a little bit here, which is like, I think I should have been harder on the call to let unlocks happen in stage 1. I actually think the correct thing to do was you can't unlock anything until 2-2. Like that would have just been correct. We should have balanced around that. The expectation being like, okay, cool. You look at your items, you look at your augment, and then you can unlock Graves and Tryndamere and stuff like that. Make them pay that 1 turn delay. I think the times when you unlock Tryndamere on like 1-3 are really weird. And I think the awkward, you have to like slam everything at the last minute feels terrible. Like it just shouldn't exist, right? And I do not think the answer is add 5 more seconds so that these random unlock conditions can exist. I think the better answer is don't let you do it there. And I think that was a miss on my call. I remember when we had the conversation, I got convinced to like let it go. I made the wrong call there. I should have said, nope, you can't unlock anything till 2-2. You know, that probably would have been a healthier game state. It doesn't have this like very awkward time add. Now, beyond that, like things like after a PvE round, my belief is that it is up to the player to utilize time as a resource. And sometimes that means making a trade-off. And I'll give you a really good example. People who try to wait to do a big roll down on like 4-1, and they wait till the econ has happened after the PvE round, and then try to do this like 60 gold roll down all in 1 turn, and then go, I didn't have enough time. It's like, well, yeah, you did. You should have used some of the time in the PvE round before. You know, and again, I've definitely watched some high-level challenger players who have realized this, and like they'll start doing their roll down early. They'll spend a little bit of gold and go down to 30 to use that time as a resource. I believe that time as a resource is one of the things that adds skill expression and depth to the game. And if we just always give you infinite time, that's not correct. Now, I will also note that I could be very wrong here. One of the things I've done wrong in the past is I've been a little too precious of things that I thought were skill expression that later ended up just becoming nice quality of life things, right? Like, go way, way back, right? Like, items being stuck to the champion on carousel provided a unique decision where you had to decide between the item and the champion and make a tough call and make a decision, and that added skill expression. Well, sure, but it was also just a pain in the ass and unfun, and having items pop off the carousel was better, right? Like, definitely one of those things that using the argument of it adds skill expression is not necessarily correct. So I am open to the idea here that actually there are just parts where we just don't have enough time and we should add more time. Like I'm open to it, even though my initial impression is, no, that's not correct. I don't want to seem like I'm being a wall here. I think we would have to really sit down and look at the game and go, when would this time be the most valuable? Is there parts? Because like there's definitely certain turns where you do this to yourself, right? Like you do a big Ishtal cash out right on 4-2 where you also had to pick your augment and deal with all that. Like nothing we can do can fix that. Now to your particular proposed solution of everyone gets an item 1 time that adds 15 seconds, pretty against that exact execution. Because what I don't want is imagine, like I hate that I have to think like this, but there will be players that will just use it as a grief thing of like, hey, nothing's going on and I know I'm never going to use this, so let's all sit around awkwardly for 15 seconds, tee-hee-hee, which isn't great. But B, it's kind of cumbersome. It's a whole new UX paradigm where the player has to use this item. And then like it's going to lead to some feel bads where it's like, oh, I meant to use my item and I didn't, and things like that. All of that to say is it's a lot of brand new UX, brand new things the player has to think about, all for a problem that I think can be solved in a more elegant and simple way, which is if we really believe there are places where the players are needing more time, either design around it to not create those situations, or stop being stubborn and add the time back. So if they need more time for augments, add more time for augments. If they need more time post PvE round, slap on 5 to 10 more seconds on the X-1s, right? Like stick with the simple solves here. Occam's razor, go with the obvious solution rather than overcomplicating it with a new system would be kind of how I would approach this. But again, initial thing is that I think we're fine, but open to the idea I could also be wrong, and I could just be being stubborn and thinking too much like a high elo player. So, all right, last question here. What advice do you have for somebody who got into TFT during the verticals era and is struggling with this set? And I wanted to touch on this question because it's interesting. If you literally go look at my match history, like my personal match history, one of the things all the way from like I won Rumble doing this, and I've been doing it now, is I actually still play a lot of verticals. I'm specifically doing it because a lot of our challenger players have me covered on the how do you play with the like deep fast 9, split your comp, stuff like that. So I don't really need to play more of that. But I've been trying to really explore full verticals, when they're good, how they work, things like that, right? I play 7 Bilge, I don't pivot out of it. I play 7 Demacia, I don't pivot out of it. I mean, there are exceptions, and that's what I want to talk about. And they generally work. Like, even in this meta right now, they're not S tier like T-Hex Yunara, although Yunara can work in vertical Ionia, hilariously enough. But they're not T-Hex, they're not Yunara, they're not Diana, etc., etc. But they're still pretty dang good. Demacia in particular, like I've won games, not like top forward. I have first placed with Lux carried 7 Demacia. It is definitely possible, you know? So my advice for somebody who got in during the TFT verticals era, unless you're already above masters, which I feel like this would be a different, like, if you're new to TFT in the verticals era, but are already above master, you probably don't need my advice for this question. But assuming that's not you, my advice is go ahead and keep playing some of the verticals. Keep really exploring them, but start to find these moments where, okay, I'm playing the vertical and I'm starting to get out capped. What can I do to make my board better, right? Say you're playing vertical Demacia Vayne, you've done well, you had a good Demacia opener, which is really solid, so you're able to win streak, you power up, you've got your Vayne going, and you're in a pretty good spot, and now it's 4-5 and you're starting to fall off. Ask yourself, what can I do to make this board better, right? Do I need that Sona on my board when I could instead play a Shyvana, you know, and really think through what that means? That's where I think you'll then start to explore and realize, like, oh, actually, I get it now. And you'll find these games, especially when the games you low roll, it will be harder, and you'll feel frustrated for sure. But the games you're in like a high roll spot, and you're like, ooh, I just hit this extra champion, or I was playing Birthday Present and got this extra 2-star 5 cost. What do I do with it? Like, that's where you'll really start to explore the bounds of the set and the way TFT can be played at the highest level. And I think that will help you expand how to think about the game. The other thing I'll say is that when you think about it in the vertical era, really just focus on playing the strongest champions. A lot of my best games right now are like, what did I 2-star? Okay, throw those onto the board, right? I had an opener the other day where it was like 2-star Anivia, 2-star Jarvan, 2-star Alawi, and then I threw in a Shen so that I had 2 Bruiser, right? It's like, this is just 3 2-star units that happen to be 2 Bruisers, but that can then lead you into, okay, cool, I did this, and that's going to lead me into Demacia as I get the Sona. I can add in the Invoker, and then I can unlock the Poppy, and go from there. Like, there's a bunch of ways you can play it. So, again, to my original question is, what advice do you have for the people who got into TFT during verticals era? Still play some verticals, still explore them, and as you do, learn to power up your comps, learn to adjust to the extra champions that are flex, and you will find that will help your fundamentals a lot, and you will feel a lot better about TFT. So, there you go. All right. Hopefully that was enough questions for today. You know me, I just like to talk about TFT. And now that I'm masters, I don't have to worry about, not being masters. Who knows? The game's so fun right now, I might keep playing it. It again, meta's but game fun. So, pretty interesting. And I'm mostly caught up on everything else. I've done all my other chores. And yeah. Other than that, it's time to start working on future stuff. So, Cool. All right. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.